I tested out last night, and that what happened last night didn't happen just now. How do we value job offers? First, who am I? I have been a financial advisor, aka a stockbroker, a financial planner selling financial plans, been an MBA and a finance student, both undergrad and grad school, a business professor here in New York City, and a Python professor, meetup co-organizer, and answerer on Stack Overflow. Why do I care? I want you to be successful and happy with your life. So how much time do we spend at work? We spend a lot of our days at work. If I were to estimate my hours at work per year, I get three weeks off. So I spend 49 weeks of the year at work. Theoretically, I arrive at 9. Theoretically, I leave it at 1800 hours or 6 o'clock. And so I spend about 1,960 hours at work every year. Those are my annual hours at work. How do we value our time? We can value our time. So say my hypothetical annual salary is 100,000 gringotts, whatever. So my hourly salary, based on the amount of time that I spend at work, would be 51 in those units. And feel free to ask questions, interrupt me if you think I'm missing something. How do we discount uncertainty? Say we had a fair coin. Say I had a fair coin, even odds for tails and heads, and you wanted to pay me. I wanted to pay you $1 if you could guess the right result in advance. How much would you pay me to play that game? Even odds. We can run this, say, 1,000 times. And the average coin game payoff for that run is 0.6. Whoops. For this run is 0.503, 0.498, 0.48, 0.497, and so on. But approximately 50 cents per game, right? But in life, we don't have that many runs, right? If we take a long-term bet, we're not going to get something that's in the limit approximation. So if our number of runs is only 10, we could see as little as 0.3 average coin game payoff. 0.4, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. This is using Python's pseudorandom number generator to determine these results. What if we had a die game? What if I paid you $1 if you could guess the right result from the roll of a die? So 1 out of 6, just for the benefit of our mathematically challenged, is 0.166. But for only 10 runs, we can get results that range like this. So how do we value when a company comes to us and says, we will give you some equity in a year if you are still with us? Or we will give you some options that will vest in a year. What is the likelihood of that happening? As I was writing this, there was a blog post that I read a long time ago that kept echoing in my head, and I can't remember the author. If somebody remembers the author, please shout the name. And he basically said, if you should imagine that the chances of a startup, for example, being successful, they're saying they're going to give you equity immediately to start. The chances of them being successful might be, imagine you're rolling a 100-sided die, and maybe 90 of those rolls would be unsuccessful and your value would go to 0. And maybe from 91 to 99 might be in the hundreds of thousands or something. And if you roll 100, then that's like a Google or a Facebook, right? And he pointed out that on his hypothetical 100-sided die, it doesn't actually have the face of showing 100. So my question is, do you want to be paid in lottery tickets? I don't think we do. But if we have this kind of an offer, we might guesstimate a value. We might estimate it, and maybe instead of valuing it in the hundreds of thousands, we might value it somewhere in the tens of thousands. Another source that I'd like to cite, I do have the author, Stephen Paulin. He wrote a book called Fire Your Boss, and it is about career management. His central thesis is not that you should get your boss fired, but that you should take control of your career and think logically about what your job is offering you and what other potential employers might be offering you. And when you have the unfortunate situation of having to choose between employers, make a decision based on the right things. And he strongly suggests that these things should not be deciding factors. Things like amenities, like do they have a gym, or do they have a beer fridge or snack bar, those sorts of things. Do they pay for your auto? Is the work supposed to be challenging? Do they have a culture? Maybe it's a non-corporate culture that in the lobby everything looks like it came from Pottery Barn or Cracker Barrel. And what is the environment like? Do they have an expense allowance? Are there advancement opportunities? You shouldn't. He says you shouldn't worry about if there are advancement opportunities. Is the employer stable? Now this is perhaps in favor of the startups. You shouldn't worry about the startups being stable. Does the job offer a lot of status? So maybe if you accepted one job, would you be more of a public figure, or maybe the public face of things, whereas in the other job you might have to maybe take more of a backseat role. In titles, he alleges titles are quite meaningless. I tend to agree with his points, and I think he makes very good arguments for them. So how do we value the tangibles? What are the important things? Well, I would argue, as does my favorite author, that income is the most important thing to value. There are also issues like the proximity to your work. How long is your commute? You value your time. We value our time. How do we value that? What price do we put on that? If we calculate our hours, our dollars per hour, or whatever unit per hour, how much time are we paying ourselves to be in transit to work every single day? What about paid time off? Paid time off is the value of not having to go into work and still getting your income. The unpaid time off is basically you paying your employer to stay at home by reducing your income. What is that value to you? Are there learning opportunities? Maybe you should consider that in your calculations. Yeah, you probably should strongly consider that in your calculations. I'm considering that in my calculations where I work, where I'm given a new project that is of extreme value to me, and I think is of extreme value to the economy. Typo. Tuition, life insurance, health insurance, retirement plans, disability insurance. These things are important to some people, but perhaps to you they're not important. Maybe you don't care about if your employer offers tuition paybacks or if they hire life insurance. Maybe you do care if you aspire to something that's maybe a position or work that would require a higher degree, or maybe life insurance is getting it through your employer is the only way to get it. You have to use your judgment, but we can actually create valuations based on these numbers. So, for example, the value of benefits for your current job, if your income is $80,000, say you spend half an hour or a quarter of an hour in transit every day, so that's a half an hour, a quarter of an hour both ways, half an hour in total. Your paid time off is worth $5,000 to you. Your unpaid time off is worth $2,000. Then you might be able to calculate the annual value of your work at $86,875. And maybe you're looking at an offer because what you're currently doing is basically one offer, and what another company might bring to you is another offer, and so you can compare those two things. So say another employer comes to you and offers you $100,000. You might have to go further in commute. The paid time off might be worth more. Unpaid time off might be worth the same or so. And maybe it brings with it some learning opportunities. You would have to learn a new technology that would allow you to earn more money in future work. So our old annual value for the job is at $86,875. The new job would be valued at $118,755, and the difference would be about $32,000 a year. How do we value that over a career? We need to make some assumptions. We need to assume what the annual growth rate in that income is. And so let's assume that it's conservative at 0.02%. I'm sorry, at 2% growth. Let's consider our cost of money, our discount rate. That's if we would just as easily have, if we would just as readily have $1,000 today as $1,100 in a year, then our discount rate is 10%. That's how important it is to have money today versus tomorrow. Say we would plan to work for another 20 years. And so the total value for the current job or the old job is $930,000 based on our calculations. The new job, the current value for that career is $1,272,215. And the difference is $341,000. Do I have any questions? Yes.
What's NPV stand for?
NPV stands for net present value.
And it seemed like overall you were discounting a lot of things that might contribute to a job being enjoyable. Is enjoyability of the workday overall something that you would say should not be included in the calculation? Or is it just specific things like pay for?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that.
Should we value how much we enjoy the work or not?
Should you value how much you enjoy the work or not? That goes kind of to those intangible things. If you take that to an extreme, then maybe you would say that you shouldn't care if one employer is completely horrible conditions to work in and another employer has incredible conditions to work in. Pollan says you shouldn't care if you have a corner office. Pollan says that if you if you're being asked to work on top of a filing cabinet for more money, you should take that. I think that's a personal decision. This in management theory, this is called workplace hygiene, and this is a tough question. It really is a tough question, and I don't have a perfect answer for you, other than just to say, usually jobs that pay more usually have better workplace hygiene. I think. Yes.
Are there any authors or models that you know of to incorporate intangibles and how or how do you address them?
I don't know. I'm discounting them entirely. Yes.
I read an article somewhere that after a certain number, maybe 80,000 a year, the income starts to have very little effect on your happiness overall. So would it be worthwhile to say, after that salary, stop counting income as a happiness generator or a value generator for the proposition? Like start looking at everything else that Colin said not to, because the money's not going to get you any happier.
I think that's a reasonable position. Reasonable people may disagree. Pollan is a lawyer and a life coach, and he's very experienced. I tend to agree with the things that he says. I like what he has to say. I would suggest you read his book. It's 25 cents used on Amazon. So that's about a cost of a cup of coffee delivered, right? And my other sources are my university library coursework and the internet. I didn't mention that part. So we have about a minute and a half. How do you do qualitative analysis? There are a lot of things to consider with qualitative analysis. If a company comes to you and says, we'll give you equity just to start, you have to think about the industry and the industry competition, things that make your industry competitive, things that would make it easy or difficult for your business to make money. You have to think about ways you can create value, the ways that the company can create value. You have to worry about marketing. And if you want to do an analysis based on these things, you would need to consider all of those things, think about them in terms of a SWOT analysis. What I like to do is I like to superimpose the things that affect competition and co-opetition with the marketing and the SWOT analysis. And then based on all of those things, you have to create a business plan and then execute that business plan. And those things are really difficult to do. Every step along the way, you could make a mistake and have problems. Any questions? Yes?
So clearly there's quite a bit that goes into this business analysis, and probably somebody with your background is much more skilled at than, say, myself, if I were to evaluate a company that was giving me a job offer. And would you say that, hiring somebody or paying for this kind of analysis to be done on a company that is offering a job makes financial sense for somebody who is educating several others?
Probably. If you're looking at, I'm not offering this as a service, so everybody knows. I'll be happy to talk about it over coffee with you. But I would, I think it absolutely would be of value if you're considering taking half the salary that you would expect to be able to take in exchange for equity in a company. If you dive in head first into this company and it's a complete failure, then you've lived on beans and ramen and don't have anything to show for it. So, yeah, absolutely. Do your due diligence. I would consider this part of my due diligence before starting a business. Absolutely, yes.
So, how, earlier you said you only have so many opportunities to roll the dice. It's not that you have infinite roll. So when you are looking at these alternatives to build your model, how many, examples are you drawing from? How many you should draw from to have a reasonable expectation of how
So you're talking about prior, your priors, and the blog post that I referenced earlier, if I remember correctly, was written by Joel Spolsky or Jeff Atwood, who've had a lot of experience being executives in businesses and starting businesses, and they are very. They're very. The author was very hawkish on the idea of putting much value on these things. If you want those things, then you should be the last co-founder. And if you're the first employee, you should be much more concerned about your paycheck and what you can put in your retirement accounts. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you, everyone.